Did you know that an ancient, powerful book was deliberately excluded from most versions of the Bible? A book so packed with secrets it might just change everything you thought you knew about biblical history. This hidden gem, known as the Book of Jubilees, has been shrouded in mystery for centuries. But what if I told you that this book holds truths that were kept hidden, intentionally left out to protect the foundations of faith as we know it today? Why was the Book of Jubilees banned from the Bible? Why did early religious leaders deliberately avoid its inclusion? Could there be truths about the Nephilim, the fallen angels, and the very origins of humanity that we were never meant to know? What really happened during the early days of creation? In this video, you will uncover the real reason the Book of Jubilees was excluded from the mainstream Bible, what the angelic revelations within it could mean for our understanding of God's plan, and why its detailed timeline of events could challenge everything we've been taught about biblical history. We will explore why the Book of Jubilees reveals a cosmic order that many believed was too radical, too detailed, and too controversial for the faith as it was shaped. You'll be shocked to learn that what was left out may hold the key to the true meaning of creation, the fall of man, and even the lost moral laws of the first generations. So stay with me as we unravel the layers of hidden history, discuss the angelic secrets that were once too powerful for the public eye, and ask yourself, what if these truths are exactly what we've been missing all along? Like, comment below your thoughts on this discovery, and don't forget to subscribe, because the journey of uncovering suppressed biblical wisdom is just beginning. The Book of Jubilees is often referred to as the Little Genesis, because it is, in essence, a retelling of the foundational stories found in the Book of Genesis, but with much more detail and divine order woven throughout. Written in the 2nd century BCE, the Book of Jubilees was once highly regarded in various Jewish communities and even considered canonical in Ethiopian Christianity. However, it was excluded from the mainstream Bible, a decision that still raises many questions to this day. But what exactly is the Book of Jubilees? At its core, it is an ancient text that expands upon the biblical accounts of the creation, the fall of man, and the patriarchal figures such as Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Moses. The book is divided into a series of jubilees, each lasting 49 years, symbolizing cycles of time that align with divine purposes. It provides a much more structured, almost mathematical view of human history, which emphasizes God's meticulous planning for humanity's salvation and the unfolding of His divine will. Every event, from the creation of the heavens to the moments of Israel's greatest trials, is marked by divine intervention, set within an apocalyptic framework of obedience and cosmic order. In Jubilees, the cosmic rhythm of time is revealed in a way that Genesis does not address. The idea of Jubilees, with their 49-year cycles, shows a world driven by a divine calendar. This spiritual architecture in the Book of Jubilees is not a random collection of events, but rather a well-orchestrated plan, where everything in God's creation is intended to fall in line with a larger, timeless pattern. This is something Genesis touches upon, but Jubilees brings it into focus with precision and structure. One powerful example from the Book of Jubilees is the timeline surrounding the creation. While the Bible provides us with a broad narrative of the 7 days of creation, Jubilees elaborates on the timeline and significance of each day, creating a clearer image of what transpired during the very beginning of time. It even goes as far as to say that Adam and Eve lived in the Garden of Eden for 7 years before the fall, a detail that Genesis does not offer. This profound statement not only deepens our understanding of their innocence, but also emphasizes the gravity of their loss when they were expelled from Eden. Why is this important? Because it invites us to reflect on what was lost, not just the paradise of Eden, but the peaceful relationship between God and humanity that was broken. This tiny detail, 7 years of life in the garden before the fall, suggests a world where Adam and Eve were given more than just a fleeting moment of perfection. They had time to experience the fullness of God's creation before everything was turned upside down. That is a powerful realization that changes how we see the story of the fall. It wasn't just about disobedience, it was about a complete shift in existence, one that ripples through all of humanity. Yet these details, and many others in the Book of Jubilees, were not included in the mainstream Bible. Why? One reason could be the level of detail Jubilees offers about the angelic realm, the Nephilim, and divine law. This book goes beyond the surface-level teachings of Genesis, filling in gaps and expanding on the heavenly realms, things that were often considered too radical for religious authorities in the early Christian church. The angels, for example, were given more substantial roles, interacting directly with humanity in ways that we don't see in the Genesis account. They were not simply messengers of God, but active participants in shaping human destiny. In addition, Jubilees offers detailed accounts of the Mosaic laws regarding dietary restrictions, circumcision, and the Sabbath, presenting them in a way that emphasizes the absolute obedience required of the faithful. This kind of rigid law-giving might have seemed out of place in the early Christian church, which was trying to soften the image of God and emphasize the love and grace available through Christ. For the early church leaders, the strict laws of Jubilees might have felt more aligned with a Jewish identity than with the universal appeal they sought to present to the world. However, it was this very specificity that made the Book of Jubilees so valuable to certain groups, particularly the Essenes, the Jewish sect that is thought to have written the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Essenes, like those who adhered to the teachings of Jubilees, believed in a world that ran on divine law, where everything had a purpose, and where strict adherence to the law ensured divine favor. They were concerned with the holiness of time, of history, and of human action, reflecting a mindset where everything in creation is interconnected through God's divine will. The Book of Jubilees, then, becomes more than just a history book. It is a spiritual manual for understanding the rhythms of God's divine plan. It is a reminder that every action has significance, that time itself is holy, and that obedience to God's laws is critical to maintaining that divine order. It suggests that the world is not a chaotic place, but one where God's intentions and timing govern every event, from the creation of the world to the end of days. But what about its relationship to the canonical Bible? The Book of Jubilees introduces these ideas, giving us deeper insights into God's relationship with humanity. Yet these detailed divine laws and cosmic order might have been too much for early Christians to accept, especially when they began to emphasize grace over law, love over strict obedience. Early Christian theology, focused on salvation through faith, might have felt uncomfortable with the book's focus on rigid moral and legal codes. While the Book of Jubilees was excluded, its influence continues to shape how we view the biblical narrative. It challenges us to consider a view of history not just as a series of events, but as a divinely ordained and purposeful process. It invites us to rethink the foundations of our faith, not just as followers of Christ, but as people who are connected to the divine storyline of the world's creation and redemption. So, what does this mean for us today? Perhaps the most significant lesson we can draw from Jubilees is the reminder that time itself is sacred. Every moment is part of a divine design, and we are called to live with awareness of that divine rhythm. The actions we take, the choices we make, and the way we follow the path laid out for us by God all contribute to the unfolding story of humanity and salvation. In the end, the Book of Jubilees offers more than just additional historical facts or a retelling of ancient stories. It offers us a deeper connection to the divine order, urging us to live with purpose, obedience, and an awareness of the cosmic order in which we live. It's a book that demands we view history not just as a record of what has been, but as a living, breathing story in which we are all active participants, fulfilling our roles in God's eternal plan. The Book of Jubilees was not just excluded from the canon, it was deliberately suppressed. The question of why remains a deeply controversial and provocative one. When we look at the early Christian and Jewish communities, we see that Jubilees posed a challenge, not just to the theological constructs of its time, but to the foundations of religious authority. This was a book that introduced new ideas and detailed revelations that felt too radical for leaders who were trying to create a unified and universally acceptable narrative of God's relationship with humanity. Why was the Book of Jubilees banned? It wasn't due to a lack of substance. On the contrary, the book offered a rich tapestry of spiritual insight and detailed knowledge. It was excluded because of its intensity. It was too precise, too detailed, and perhaps even too daring in its view of the universe and its divine workings. For the early church leaders, the focus on strict adherence to Mosaic law, the cosmic order, and the angelic realm presented in the Book of Jubilees was something they felt needed to be controlled. This kind of specificity did not align with the growing Christian theology that was beginning to emphasize grace, forgiveness, and spiritual freedom over adherence to the letter of the law. Jubilees is a book that offers more than just a history of the ancient world. It gives a theological blueprint, one that lays out God's plan for humanity with staggering detail. The angelic visions, divine cycles of time, and the ritualistic practices in Jubilees gave an image of a universe where every event was governed by divine timing, and the divine law was something that needed to be obeyed to the letter. For a church that was moving towards a message of freedom through faith, this level of control and obedience felt stifling and counterproductive to the gospel of love and liberation that was being spread. One striking example of this is the role of angels. In the Book of Jubilees, angels aren't merely messengers. They are active participants in the creation and ordering of the world. They shape human destiny, intervene in historical events, and play a key role in the moral and spiritual laws that govern the universe. In fact, some of the most controversial moments in the book are centered around the fallen angels, who descend to earth and intermarry with human women, producing the Nephilim, the giants of legend. This angelic rebellion and the forbidden knowledge they brought to humanity caused a cosmic imbalance that was believed to have contributed to the corruption of the world. The Book of Jubilees tells us that these angels not only imparted knowledge about weaponry and enchantment, but they also corrupted humanity in ways that threatened the very fabric of creation. This angelic involvement in the early chapters of human history is something that sets Jubilees apart from Genesis. Genesis presents angels as messengers, as servants of God's will, but Jubilees explores a deeper, more intimate relationship between humanity and these divine beings. It suggests a world where angels were actively involved in human affairs, guiding and shaping the course of history. For early Christian leaders, this was a bridge too far. They had already distanced themselves from ideas that were too mystical or too otherworldly, and Jubilees challenged that view with its detailed descriptions of these celestial beings. The exclusion of Jubilees also had to do with its emphasis on the Mosaic law. Jubilees is very clear about the importance of obedience to the law. It stresses the significance of dietary restrictions, circumcision, and Sabbath observance. These laws are not presented as mere historical notes, but as divine commandments that must be followed without question. This strict legalism was something that early Christianity was trying to move away from. Christianity, especially as it was becoming more widespread in the Roman Empire, needed to appeal to a broader audience, one that wasn't familiar with or inclined toward the detailed legalistic codes of Judaism. As such, books like Jubilees, which emphasized the necessity of law and ritual purity, became increasingly difficult to reconcile with the universal message of Christ's love and spiritual freedom. But there's more. Jubilees also contained a deeper, apocalyptic worldview, one that presented a timeline of history governed by divine judgment. While the book of Revelation in the New Testament shares some of these apocalyptic themes, the book of Jubilees presents God's judgment as a continuing, inevitable process that will unfold over the course of the Jubilees. This cosmic timeline emphasized that history itself was a sacred cycle, where every event was part of a greater, divinely orchestrated plan. Early church leaders, who were trying to establish a unified Christian doctrine that would be palatable to both Jews and Gentiles, found this view of history too rigid and threatening to the message of grace they wanted to spread. Jubilees also went against the growing Christian view of God's mercy and grace. While the New Testament began to focus more on the forgiveness of sins and the spiritual freedom that comes through faith in Christ, Jubilees places a heavy emphasis on the strictness of the law. It suggests that salvation is not just a matter of faith, but a matter of following the law in its most detailed form. This would have made the book too exclusive, too narrow in its focus, and too Jewish for early Christians, who were already grappling with how to define their new faith in a way that could include non-Jews without requiring them to adopt the full Mosaic law. The deeper mysteries of the Book of Jubilees also had to do with divine authority, the way it portrayed God's commands as absolute, and how it structured history around cycles that were clearly divinely appointed. For some, this raised difficult theological questions about the nature of God's will and human free will. How much of history was really under human control? And if everything is part of a divine plan, what happens to the free will of individuals? These were questions that could have led to theological conflicts that early church leaders were eager to avoid as they worked to establish a more simplified and unified faith. But for all the controversy surrounding its exclusion, the Book of Jubilees holds hidden treasures. The angelic interventions, the cosmic structure of time, and the deep moral teachings it contains still offer profound insights for those willing to explore them. Even though it was suppressed, Jubilees continues to challenge us to think about the relationship between divine law and grace, and how God's timing shapes every moment in history. The book speaks to a world where obedience to divine law is central, where angels are deeply involved in shaping human destiny, and where every cycle of time is a divine opportunity for salvation. In a way, the Book of Jubilees serves as a reminder that we are all part of something greater, something divinely planned, and that our actions matter in the grand story of God's creation. For those who seek to understand the mysteries of history, faith, and divine law, the Book of Jubilees remains a fascinating and often overlooked text that can bring us closer to understanding the very heart of God's eternal plan. The Book of Jubilees stands apart from the canonical scriptures in several profound and significant ways, offering a distinct theological perspective that challenges the worldview presented in the more widely accepted books of the Bible. This difference is not merely in the content or events it recounts, but in its approach to time, divine law, and angelic involvement, elements that deeply shape the way we understand the sacred text. One of the most striking differences between the Book of Jubilees and the canonical Bible is its detailed timeline. While the Book of Genesis offers a broad overview of creation, the flood, and the early patriarchs, Jubilees fills in the gaps, offering a precise chronology of events. Jubilees doesn't just recount these events, it orders them, presenting them within a divinely ordained structure of 49-year Jubilees, where every cycle represents a turning point in the cosmic plan. Each of these cycles highlights the relationship between humanity and God in a rhythmic pattern, offering a sense that time itself is sacred and every moment is part of a divine timetable. This cosmic calendar of Jubilees transforms our understanding of biblical history, suggesting that everything that has ever happened is not just random, but meticulously planned by God, fulfilling His ultimate purpose. Take, for example, the creation story. In the book of Genesis, the creation unfolds over 7 days, But Jubilees introduces a more systematic view of time, placing each day of creation within a broader context of divine rhythm. The Book of Jubilees doesn't just say that God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. It emphasizes that these acts of creation fit into a larger cosmic order that has been established for all time. The 7 days of creation aren't just isolated events. They are part of the divine blueprint that has shaped history, salvation, and the future. Every event from the creation of the world to the fall of man and the flood is part of an ongoing cycle of restoration and judgment, a divine rhythm that underscores the very structure of existence. This cyclical view of time is also extended to the Mosaic law. While Genesis touches on the beginning of God's laws, such as the Sabbath, the Book of Jubilees goes into great detail about the specific laws that must be followed. Jubilees is much more focused on obedience to the law of Moses, offering a comprehensive guide for how to live according to God's commandments. The divine law in Jubilees is central to the narrative, not just as a set of moral guidelines, but as a key to understanding the order of creation itself. It presents the law as an integral part of the divine design, an essential aspect of God's perfect plan for the world and humanity. While Genesis briefly introduces the law, Jubilees emphasizes its role in the cosmic order, suggesting that the law is not merely for human conduct, but is woven into the fabric of creation. To live according to the law is to live in harmony with the divine will, to follow the rhythms of the universe as set by God. In contrast, the canonical Bible moves toward a more spiritual understanding of salvation. In the New Testament, for example, Jesus Christ is portrayed as the fulfillment of the law, a shift from the strict adherence to Mosaic law found in the Old Testament. This shift introduces a new focus on faith, grace, and spiritual freedom, a message that Jubilees, with its emphasis on rigid obedience to the law, does not accommodate. The New Testament suggests that salvation is not through works or law-keeping, but through faith in Christ. Jubilees, by contrast, underscores that obedience to God's law is the key to salvation and divine favor. This difference in emphasis makes Jubilees feel incompatible with the Christian view of salvation by grace, a concept that becomes the heart of Christian theology. The New Testament focuses on the redemptive power of Christ, while Jubilees points to the divine order and the importance of keeping God's commandments. Another key difference lies in the portrayal of angels and their role in history. In the canonical Bible, angels are often messengers who appear at significant moments to convey God's will. However, in Jubilees, angels are active participants in shaping the course of history. They don't just announce God's will, they carry out divine actions. In the Book of Jubilees, angels are intricately involved in the events of creation, the flood, and the lives of the patriarchs. They guide, instruct, and sometimes even intervene in human affairs. In one of the most intriguing and controversial sections, the fallen angels, or watchers, descend to earth and corrupt humanity, leading to the creation of the Nephilim, the giants who became notorious for their rebellion and violence. This storyline is deeply woven into the moral fabric of Jubilees, suggesting that the angelic realm has a direct hand in shaping human destiny. In contrast, the canonical Bible does not delve into this complex relationship between angels and humans. Genesis briefly mentions the sons of God marrying the daughters of men, but it doesn't explore the implications of this interaction the way Jubilees does. The Book of Jubilees presents a world where angels are not distant, spiritual beings but active agents who intervene directly in the flow of human history. This presentation of angels also plays into the apocalyptic worldview that permeates Jubilees. The book introduces a cosmic order in which time is structured around divine judgment and divine restoration. Jubilees is keenly aware of the consequences of disobedience, particularly in its accounts of the Watchers and the flood, where divine punishment is meted out in response to human rebellion. This apocalyptic timeline stands in contrast to the New Testament message of hope, forgiveness, and restoration through Christ. The Book of Revelation does share apocalyptic themes, but it places more emphasis on grace and the ultimate victory of good. In Jubilees, the cosmic judgment of God is relentless and certain, a reminder that the universe operates according to divine law and that obedience is essential to restoration. Despite these differences, Jubilees offers profound insights that are often overlooked in the mainstream biblical narrative. While it emphasizes obedience and law, it also shows the beauty of living in harmony with the divine plan. Its portrayal of angels as active participants in human history reminds us that the spiritual realm is intimately involved in our lives, and the moral choices we make are significant in the grand tapestry of God's creation. The precise structure of time in Jubilees challenges us to think of our lives as part of a divine rhythm, where every action, every prayer, and every choice we make aligns with the cosmic order set in place by God. As we reflect on the Book of Jubilees, we are reminded that obedience to God's law is not just a set of rules. It is a divine opportunity to align ourselves with the heavenly order, to live in harmony with God's perfect plan for the world. The lessons of Jubilees continue to echo through the ages, calling us to remember that we are part of something much greater than ourselves, something that is divinely orchestrated and eternal. As we reflect on the profound insights shared throughout this video, it's clear that the Book of Jubilees isn't just a forgotten text. It's a gateway to a deeper understanding of the divine structure of our world. In the midst of a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, Jubilees offers us a sense of order, a reminder that time itself is sacred, and every action is part of a greater divine plan. It challenges us to rethink how we approach obedience, faith, and our relationship with the divine. It's an invitation to view our lives as part of a larger story, one where every decision, every prayer, and every moment matters, in the grand cosmic timetable designed by God. The lessons from Jubilees remind us that we are not isolated beings, but part of a divine cycle that extends far beyond our individual lives. The story of creation, the fall of man, and the path to redemption are all intricately woven into this larger tapestry where angels, cosmic rhythms, and divine laws shape the world. It offers a profound sense of connection, not just with God, but with each other, as we all share in this sacred journey. But beyond its historical significance, the Book of Jubilees speaks to us on a deeply personal level. It calls us to examine our own lives, our actions, our faith, and our choices, and to recognize that we too are part of a divine rhythm. Whether we are facing trials or moments of joy, every moment is an opportunity to align ourselves with God's will. In a world where it can sometimes feel like everything is slipping through our fingers, Jubilees reminds us that there is a purpose in everything, and that God's plan is always unfolding, even when we cannot see it clearly. And just as the angels in Jubilees were sent to guide and protect humanity, we too are called to be guides for each other, to uplift, to support, and to help one another find our way in the divine dance of life. We are all connected, and every act of kindness, every word of encouragement is a reflection of the divine love that flows through all of us. If you have found any value in this video, if the story of Jubilees has sparked a sense of wonder, healing, or inspiration in your heart, then I invite you to support this channel in a way that feels right for you. The energy we share here is something truly special, and every small act of encouragement helps us keep this journey going. Whether it's a simple like, a thoughtful comment, or subscribing to this channel, know that your support is a blessing. If these words have brought you a little closer to understanding the sacred order of life, to seeing God's hand at work in the moments we often overlook, I ask that you consider being a part of this community of seekers, where we continue to explore the mysteries of faith and history together. Your support means the world, and it allows us to keep bringing you more content that seeks to enrich, uplift, and provide light in this often dark world. Perhaps, just like the Book of Jubilees opens our eyes to new perspectives, you might feel that this journey is one that could continue to nourish your soul. If you believe this message has touched your heart, then share this video with others who might need a little light. After all, when we share knowledge and love, we help build a world that is more connected and whole. In the end, we are all part of a greater story, one that began with creation and continues through each of us today. As we walk through the ups and downs of life, remember that the divine rhythm of time is still at work, and we are all playing our part in this grand, eternal symphony. Let's continue to grow together in faith and understanding, sharing what we've learned along the way. Thank you, from the depths of my heart, for being part of this journey. Your presence, your encouragement, and your willingness to explore the mysteries of our faith together mean more than words can express. May you find peace, understanding, and divine direction in the cycles of your own life. And as you walk forward, may you feel the gentle reminder that you are part of a story much bigger than you realize, one that is filled with purpose, grace, and the loving hand of God guiding us all along the way. Thank you once again, and may you always walk in the light of God's eternal love.